and I welcome you to another episode of Conversations at Foothills by Isra. The content on mainstream media can compete with the content on social media, which has no boundaries or lines.
I'm old enough to remember a time when we were not allowed to show prisoners of war, interview prisoners of war, show dead bodies. And
There were some red lines.
Yes, those are gone now. Because if you don't show it, the guy with the iPhone will.
The era of mainstream media is over, or do you think it is still relevant today?
It's a new competition among AI chatbots. So the social media platforms are less competitive now.
Debate has sort of moved on from regulating social media platforms to regulating AI
Yeah.
or chatbots.
You know, if you can't beat them, join them.
In China, we have some regulation documents. These documents was issued by the government, and the platforms are following the regulations. I think it's very effective.
How do you deal with that, fake news or misinformation, which is happening, being thrown into on the social media platform?
Well, this carpet is red, as you can see. And then he'll say, no, it's green. How is this green? It's red. Don't you see? No. In my country, this is green. And now this is what I've learned, and this. So it is his truth.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rahman Azhar and I welcome you to another episode of the podcast series Conversations at Foothills by Isra. Today, we are going to talk about manufacturing reality and perception building in the post-truth era. And to discuss this issue, I have very esteemed journalists and scholars with me. We have with us Ms. Shui Zheng. Ms. Shui Zheng is a senior editor at Xinhua News Agency and a research fellow at Xinhua Institute. We have also with us Ms. Tania Butsazain. Ms. Tania is a Canadian journalist, author, and communication strategist with over 2 decades of experience covering Afghanistan, Middle East, and South Asia. I welcome both of you. First, let me just start the discussion by understanding the concept of what we mean by post-truth era. Ms. Tania, how do you see the advent of social media has impacted the entire media landscape, and especially how perceptions are made and how communication is done in this age?
Okay, well, first let's begin by defining the post-truth era. And this is essentially a time where facts have less to do with the story than the actual emotions that it elicits. And how people look for stories that confirm their biases rather than stories that may challenge their preconceived notions. So in this space, social media has actually exacerbated the situation where people can actively either seek out news sources that confirm those biases or simply reside in an ecosystem where the news sources that they get, that they access, are those that just feed them what they want to hear.
Right. And Ms. Shui, how do you see this now, the modern communication and the engagement? It's not just between the individuals now. It's also defining the interplay between states as well. So how do you see that, especially when it comes to in the political discourses that we see?
Yeah, we know that there is a very special element nowadays in our mass communication, that is time. Because on the social media era, the broadcast or the communication information exchanges happened immediately to worldwide. So rumors run fast. When we feel it, it's just like earthquake. When we feel it, disaster already happened. Especially in political campaign, when we can imagine if some elections is going to happen in an hour, and within this hour something happened. I mean, some rumors run rampant on social media.
The scale is like really fast.
Yeah.
You know, the pace is really fast.
Yeah, it's
To say bad news travels fast, but fake news travels faster.
Yeah, totally agree.
Right. So, but do you think it is also impacting how decisions are made?
Of course, we can see that the disastrous consequences of rumors or disinformations, they are very harmful to our society, not only on political side, but also on some other social governance events. So I think everybody is now thinking, what shall we do? So that's the topic we are discussing.
All right. And Ms. Gotsevin, how do you see this impacting the policy making? Because, the governments, they react to what is being talked about and how the narratives are shaping. And they're not just concerned about what actual decisions are they making, but how those decisions are being perceived as well.
Absolutely, it's a consideration. But then that's always been the case. I mean, you have pollsters who take the temperature during election time or just generally to get a sense of public opinion on various policies. It's always been the case. Social media just kind of makes it more accessible. You no longer have to actually consult a pollster. You can actually follow certain accounts and get a sense of what people are saying. In terms of how that impacts policy, I'm not a policymaker. I can certainly say that it has impacted media in that editorial decisions now are impacted by what the people want to read about, what the people want to hear about. So that will kind of feed the beast where, okay, well, people only want to hear about this right now, and then other stories are neglected because there's no appetite for it.
So this is very interesting that not just the governments or the policymakers, but also the media itself is being impacted by this. But Ms. Shui, the news has always been there.
Yeah.
And some say that only the distribution platform has changed and the news or the value of the news is still there, or the truth is still out there somewhere. Do you agree, or it has all become very relative with alternate platforms, competing platforms?
Actually, I think platforms have huge powers in narrative shapings today because they have the algorithm and they can distribute whether this information can go to some certain groups or not. So I think the government needs some strong regulation on platforms, but the platforms is using every bit of their effort to defy this kind of regulation. That's poses challenges to every government.
Right. But whenever you try to bring regulation, there is also a debate about freedom of expression versus regulation, and how much do you want to regulate, and who's regulating who. So how do we settle this question?
That is a very complicated problem. But what I'm talking now is the regulation on the platform. I think because we know that the algorithm is not transparent, usually we say it's algorithm black box. Is that right? So in this kind of black box, I think many informations have been swallowed by the black box, and some were released out to the public. So I think this kind of behaviors is not justice.
Right.
So the government need to do something to make the algorithm more transparent and make the platforms more responsible and let the truth come out.
All right. Ms. Godswin, what is your take on this regulation versus freedom debate?
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, there are those who say that the democratization of the media landscape is a good thing because you have more outlets now, more platforms that are challenging legacy media's hold on narrative. Fair enough. But on the other hand, when it's unregulated, it's anarchic, and you have stories circulating that have no basis in truth, and the average guy sitting at home doesn't have the tools to tell. And this is a real challenge because it has it poses the danger of impacting the way people think, and it's not even based on truth. So you do have these companies and agencies now that claim to be able to tell you, verify whether this video is real or not. But then how politicized are those companies?
Right.
Just now we talked about decision makers. Every decision makers need to know what the public opinion are thinking about. So it's very important for the policymakers to know what kind of policy are in favor of public opinion. So that's why I think the social media need more stronger regulation, because if they influence the public opinion and toward a wrong way, how can we make a right policy, a right decision?
And then the difference is also making a populist decision is different from making an objective or what is better for the state.
Well, there's two things. I mean, you do have governments that are taking measures now. You have some that have very publicly stepped forward, France, Spain, saying, we're going to not just regulate, but also limit the age that young people can start accessing social media.
A lot of countries have recently passed legislation.
But here's the other thing, is that I think there's also a need for education at a young age, teaching children, young people, or giving them the critical thinking tools to be able to discern whether this is real or whether this one has a nefarious agenda. These things have to be taught.
But this is very interesting because, I mean, the old notion about journalism is that there should be no government control or government regulation because, for understandable reasons. But when you bring in government regulation, even for social media platforms, so there is an argument that maybe you're trying to regulate journalism as well. So is there a place where do you draw the line?
Look, there's a fine line between regulation and censorship, of course. But I'm of the thinking that journalism is a profession that has standards and that has rules. And, it's like engineering. It's like architecture. There are rules to live by. And that means you have to have sources. You have to source your claims. You can't just invent your facts. And you have to be as balanced in this is how we were taught. That seems to have changed right now, where there's, because of the whole clickbait notion, feeding the beast, giving people what they want to hear, and the speed with which we have to get news out, that's kind of gone out the window a little bit. But there were once rules. There were also, for example, regulations on showing dead bodies. I'm old enough to remember a time when we were not allowed to show prisoners of war, interview prisoners of war, show dead bodies, and there were these. But
there were some red lines.
Yes, those are gone now because if you don't show it, the guy with the iPhone will.
Right. Well, but those lines are blurred. But Ms. Yang, are there any gold standards or best practices that, I mean, as a journalist or as a state you can follow, or do you think it's all relative?
As a journalist, we will always be professional. But as a journalist, we are very weak against the power of platforms. If they want what we wrote to be known by people, they have the power. But we cannot reach people without platforms. So we are very weak, and the government's regulation on that will help us to get heard. So I think that's a good thing for the government to do strong regulations against platforms. That would be good for journalists.
Right. But now there's another debate as well, Mr. Gotsajan, that mainstream media does not, it's not relevant anymore. There's all these social media platforms. It's a very direct form of communication. And there was a time when the politicians, governments, companies, they all needed mainstream media to communicate with the public. Do you think that the era of mainstream media is over, or do you think it is still relevant today?
Well, there was a big challenge for them to remain relevant, yes. And they're struggling. Some are failing. There have been a lot of, we've been hearing a lot of layoffs. A lot of these mainstream media are not doing as well as they used to. Politicians today, governments no longer need to go through these channels of communication. They have their own social media account. If such and such minister wants to say something, he goes on his X account or he goes on Facebook, whatever is more popular in his country. So there's that. So the mainstream media had a responsibility to up their game and keep up, package their information in such a way where it's competitive. So more short videos, more explainers, minute
But
long.
like you said, I mean, the kind of content that's out there on the social media, which has no red lines, with mainstream media, all the regulations, checks and balances, your editor sitting on top of you, do you think the content on mainstream media can compete with the content on social media, which has no boundaries or lines?
They can. I think it's just it's a question of mastering the new form of journalism, which is more visual. Um, there was a time where 1,200-word articles were standard. Today, nobody reads 1,200 words. It's 800, and then now actually they want less than 800 because attention spans have been reduced. So you have to adapt to the changing society and the changing way that people consume news. The reality is it's not like before. So to stay in the game, they have to adapt.
Right. And Ms. Yang, what is your take on this? Is mainstream media, do people still need mainstream media?
I think you get the point. Actually, in China, I think we are in the same situation with our peers in the industry, in other part of the world. I think the mainstream media is struggling and have been struggling for a long time.
Right.
We have competitors from social media, from self-media, now from AI chatbots. So we have been struggling for a long time.
But media has seen a lot of these transitions. I mean, we have seen the era of radio, and then we've seen the era of print, and then from print to TV. From TV, there's been a transition to social media. How is today different from from whatever transitions we have seen with the media in the past?
Yeah, actually, we discussed. When I was in China, I discussed with my colleagues about what is the real main media nowadays. We saw that TV industry is going down, and the social media platforms are also struggling, and they are going down. Now the AI chatbot is rising because more and more people are using AI chatbot to get their information. And they just ask, what is the top news today? And then the chatbot will answer the question. And finally, more and more people will use this method to get their news
Right.
instead of from social media or from traditional paper, TV, radio. Some
It's
channels.
changing so rapidly. I mean,
Yeah, and I'm not worrying about Gen Z because they are younger than our generation,
right.
and they are
More
getting
tech savvy.
more adapted to this new kind of things. So if they are the first bunch of people getting used to chatbot, and maybe all of us are following them. So social media platforms, they are trying to transform to this new channel. In China, we saw some big social media platforms are using this new way to get more subscribers, such as the Tencent, which runs the WeChat, and Baidu now have its own AI chatbot, and some others. So it's a new competition among AI chatbots.
Right.
So the social media platforms are less competitive now.
So, what you mean to say is that the debate has sort of moved on from regulating social media platforms to regulating AI
Yes.
or chatbots.
Yeah.
Oh, Ms. Scott Sizzle, what is your take on this?
Well, to add to what you just said, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yes.
So I think to deny that this is a problem and to think that it's going to go away is wrong, right? So a lot of the ones that will survive, the media organizations that will survive, are accepting that this is not going anywhere, and they are joining the fray. So you see a lot of these old, established media outlets now with a presence on Instagram, for example, where they package their what would have been a longer format story into this sort of 1.5-minute kind of reel that's easy to consume. And yes, I share your confidence in Gen Z in that they have a different starting point.
Right.
I remember when email first began. For them, there was always an iPad. They grew up watching, using iPads and whatnot. So I think they have a different starting point. It's just really about teaching them the skill set, not to believe everything you read, everything you hear, and to be a bit more discriminating in the same way that our parents told us, don't talk to strangers when you go to school. It's that kind of
Right. But
training.
looking, I mean, one of the challenges that today's generation or all the journalists face is also the issue of fake news, misinformation, disinformation. I mean, there are a lot of categories. I won't go into the detail, but it's all fake and fabricated or the news which is not true. How do you deal with that as a journalist and also as someone who's just using social media, I mean, for casual conversations or communication or just to know about the world?
We ever believe that if we can find the truth and write it immediately, let people know that we can help people to know the truth. But actually, the first, people do not wait, and the second, because they got the wrong information first, if they saw the truth, they won't believe it.
Yeah, it's just like the bad news travels so fast that it has already reached before someone spells out whatever is actually happening.
Yeah, so I didn't find a very good solution on the social media platform era, but now we are entering the AI era. So I'm dreaming of a new kind of solution. If because the AI chatbot are based on large language models, and they put a lot of language like stuffs into the model to let it be smart. So if many people believe that the mainstream media, they write about truth, and then the AI chatbot companies want to put more this true stuffs into their models, and then maybe our stuff can be seen and heard by people. And if another AI chatbot, they just randomly get the materials to put into the models, maybe people won't believe it after some time. And then this kind of competition will let the AI chatbot who use the real stuffs to win. So I think this may be a scenario.
Won't it be a challenge because most of these chatbots or the information that we see on just random searches, it is the user generated content, and you can, I mean, these social media platforms, they do not have the sort of mechanisms which can sort of dissect what is actually true or what is just being said by a user. So how do you differentiate between the two?
I think first, government regulation is very important, and the second, people are smart. People are choosing the AI chatbot that
You
can
believe in
tell you the truth. Is that right? People will find out which AI bot is not telling the truth. So after some time, we can have a kind of solution that people will recognize which tool I should get.
Ms. Gotsazin, it's also a race against time as well, especially when something is actually taking place. Now we see very real-time reporting rather than news getting somewhere, you fact-checking, double-check that, and then sort of relay that. So now it's all just happening there, and it's being telecasted, broadcasted live. So how do you deal with that if there is fake news or misinformation which is happening, being thrown into the on the social media platform?
I think some of the old precepts, they stand in that if you are mindful of your reputation and your credibility as a journalist, as a media practitioner, then you have to be careful. And while speed might give you sort of 15 minutes of fame, gain you some followers, down the road, it will erode your reputation if you are seen to be simply posting anything that gets the clicks. So the old rules apply. Don't say something that you are not 100% is based in fact. And how do you check facts? It's still the old-fashioned way. You talk to people, you get a sense, then you look for data that supports these claims,
Right.
and then you source it and you say, well, I've spoken to several people who work at this institution, and they all say ABC, and then that way you kind of covered your faces. So rather than put something out there and say, there's been an explosion at the corner of such and such, and it's such and such who did it. who said that?
So it's
Yeah.
just avoiding knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah. And because you might win in the short term, oh, this guy knows what's going on, but long term, you lose credibility. So it's also up to the person. We could say the government should do this, should do that, but to a certain extent, it's also your own responsibility as a professional.
But there's also another challenge, which is the shock value of any news. As a journalist, you understand, and the social media or users can go to any length. How do you deal that as a journalist? Because when you are going to say what is actually the case, people are like, okay, this is it. But what he said, I mean, that's explosive. So how do you deal with that?
It's a challenge, but so is cancel culture. So is trolling. If a journalist is saying something you don't want to hear, people gang up and try to discredit. So it's a completely new landscape, and I think we're all trying to figure it out slowly. But now we've reached a point where if you find yourself unable to report what you want to report, you can set up your own podcast, your own online YouTube channel, and say whatever you want. So I think it's a very anarchic period right now, and
Right.
some regulation will have to come into
You
it. But I
think
will
it's
have to leave that.
like a Wild West?
It is absolutely.
I think when we discuss this problem, most people, many people have already realized the problem that we are facing. So I think if many people have been realizing this kind of problems, the problem will get a solution.
All right. But regarding the solutions, one of the things that you pointed out is the regulation and governments stepping in, maybe setting some boundaries. With all these transnational social media platforms, where do you bring in the regulation? Or do you think are we moving towards that?
In China, we have some regulation documents. These documents was issued by the government, and the platforms are following the regulations. I think that maybe not many country can do this, but I think it's very effective. Although there are still rumors, there are still some people want to spread some malicious informations, but I think at least there's a power against this kind of malicious behaviors. I think that is maybe how to say a new kind of way to fight against disinformation and misinformations. Maybe some other countries can study it, and maybe some other government can do the same thing.
Right. Ms. Gotsurin, the governments or the fact checking is now actually it's taking place. But sometimes the events, I mean, for example, elections, we have seen so many examples where this phenomena of fake news and misinformation impacts electoral processes that happen on a particular day. By the time the news gets verified or unverified, the time has already passed. So do you think these mechanisms, these fact-checking processes, or whatever the process is, also picking up pace in times to come?
That's a very good question. Is the fact checking and sort of the checks and balances developing fast enough to
Yes.
keep up with the damage? I can't say. You're right. Elections nowadays are a circus with, and it's hard to tell the difference between AI generated content by the time it's proven to be fake. It already did its damage, and not just in America, but also various other countries. I think no one is immune from this.
It's like living the day and then moving on.
Yeah, like fake conversations created, very believable between, or damaging videos of people in questionable circumstances, and some people, yes, they believe it, which is why we come back to education. I think we have to play the long game and say, okay, we have to start educating the younger generations to tell the difference.
Yeah, sometimes the manufactured choose looks beautiful.
Yeah, actually looks better than the news reports. Yeah, you want to believe it.
And it's also taking place in such an organized way as well. The manufacturing of it, or the manufacturing of perception, is taking place in a way that it is all looks very organized.
Or let me say one other thing. It's not even just manufactured stuff. The fact that sometimes the content is real, but the details have been changed. So it will have been something from 2009, and suddenly it enters the discourse mislabeled as it happened yesterday. So it's not fake.
But that angling wasn't that always there even in the mainstream media as well? I mean,
Mainstream media was bound by certain regulations. If you have committed a mistake, if there has been an error, you issue a statement that we reported on this day, we are correcting this, issuing corrections. That's not happening on social media so much. And maybe that's where regulation comes in, where you have to be transparent. And because that is, at the end of the day, the reason why we are where we are today is because trust erosion.
right.
People lost trust in the institution, so they sought news and information elsewhere. So the government and all these mainstream institutions have a responsibility now to regain public trust.
I don't know. You can call it a theoretical question. You can call it a philosophical question as well. But do you think the truth is still relative, or is it just an alternate truth for everyone?
In my mind, truth is always relevant because we need truth to help us make our mind clear and make right decisions and help the human civilization keep survival.
But Ms. Gotselin, do you think that the truth is still relative? It's all relative, or somewhere out there, reality does exist, and people might be interested in knowing what actually is happening?
Well, this idea of my truth and your truth is a new concept. And it's always made me a little bit uncomfortable because I do believe that truth should be based on facts. But I've now, in my career, worked in different countries and for different media organizations where I've worked with colleagues, and we will disagree on fundamental issues. And I find myself, for instance, I'll say, well, this carpet is red, as you can see. And then he'll say, no, it's green. But how is this green? It's red, don't you see? No, in my country, this is green. And this is what I've learned. And this. So it is his truth, because there's certain set of facts that suggest to this colleague that this carpet is green. So it is true that truth seems to be different wherever you are. And some of it back in the day used to be pushed through censorship. So that guy had no access to alternative sources of information. There were countries where Wikipedia was banned, for instance, because something was mentioned there that was against the truth in that country. And every country has these types of things. So my truth, your truth, it's something I'm so grappling with personally.
Right. And the saying, do you think that objectivity is still there, or is it just all perception that we see on media, social media, AI?
In this era, be objective is more and more harder. So I think people have their own minds. They should keep their mind independent so they can find their own shoes. But actually, sometimes it's very tricky because if, such as a sentence, it's true, but if we put only part of the words into a different
In different contexts.
yeah, that will be a false information. So sometimes it's very tricky. We should know the whole picture. We should know what the context is and make our judgment.
Do you think, it's like just a person who is using social media and not a professional journalist? I'm asking about a person just using social media, scrolling through news stories. Do you think he'll be able to understand what is real and where does the perception ends and reality begins?
No, actually, we all have the experience that when we check the news online through social media, sometimes we still need to ask our colleagues or our friends what happened. because everybody have their echo chamber of information, and they need to getting out from the echo chamber to see what other people's get. So that's a kind of effect.
Well,
Now,
we used to have that parable of the elephant and the blind men, each one holding one side and saying, no, the elephant is long and skinny. No, the elephant is. So yes, you have to seek other perspectives to have a better concept of what truth is.
right, but it sort of reinforces your notions as well. The echo chamber that she talked about sort of pushes you and strengthens your beliefs that already exist. So, how do you deal with that? Because if I think of something and it's being reinforced by so many other sources, so I'll stick to my reality, just like you said.
Well, you have to want to seek truth. You have to want to be a seeker of truth, I think, in order to. And again, as journalists, we have a responsibility to do it. As a private citizen, you can do whatever you want, but as a professional journalist, you have a responsibility to look at all the sides of the story and give your audience or your consumers as full a picture, as accurate a picture as possible. Let them decide.
Yeah, maybe we won't lose our job because in this post-truth era, the professional journalism who can tell you the truth is valuable. Is that right?
Right. Maybe. All right. Thank you, Ms. Gotsajan and Ms. Jane. Thank you so much for your time. And as I say in media, that perception is everything and reality is nothing. I think there's a lot of focus on changing the perception, and rather the focus should be on changing reality as well. With this, I hope today's conversation helped you understand the concepts of perception manufacturing in the post-truth era. With this, thank you so much.